Hello friends, how have you been? Do you remember a TikTok challenge calling my girlfriend my wife to see her reaction? If you have not watched it, you can check it out. Acted or real, in the video, it prompted the same reaction from the young women. It appeared like an unexpected turn of events. Staying at girlfriend-boyfriend level appears to be the new normal. Taking the relationship to husband and wife level has become a form of validation for young women that they are good enough to be considered for a long-term relationship. Why are young men not committing to marriage? What is holding your man back from making a marriage decision? In this video, I am going to share what I have discovered through informal discussions with friends and close acquaintances who I am sure spoke with honesty. There were not so many to constitute a statistical research, but their reasons made a lot of sense. They taught me a lot. They cleared some of my biases and either tore down some or confirmed others. In this video, I will share with you reasons why young men are not eager to commit to a marriage relationship like it was in the past. My goal is to put the band-aid off the wound so that it starts to heal. Welcome to the In Honor of Love channel. My name is Ssenyonjo Andrew. I have been married for 13 years and lucky to have a wife who has made the choice to stay with me regardless. Even though I don't consider it as credentials sufficient enough to speak authoritatively about this subject, in our marriage I have been and still is a student of love. I am also a teacher by degree and at heart. I love to share knowledge that can liberate. Walking the journey of love or marriage becomes easier if you have an idea of what might happen. It hits differently. It's from the things I have learned while loving and being loved and the passion I have towards love and relationships that I make this video. Please subscribe to my channel. I don't think young women even know what they are up against in their quest for a marriage partner. Before I share, I want to state that these reasons are not a representation of the all young women out there, but they are a good eye-opener for those who desire to make things work. It helps to know what is holding your man back from making a marriage decision. Number one, experience with past relationships. And honestly, this is not your doing. We are in a hurting generation. It is rare not to find a young man who has not been disappointed by a young woman before. Of course, the reverse is true. However, in this video, I am uniquely focusing on why men are not committing. So I'll address the young men side. The bad experiences from these past relationships have created in young men layers and filters they use to verify who they commit to. That right there is the real issue. It has created young men who only love at the surface. They will not make themselves vulnerable. You know those relationships where people share the silly childhood stories of the light moments in their day, laugh at some mistakes, laugh at their mistakes, share their deepest secrets. These kinds of relationships don't get that deep. This level of friendship is never reached in these kinds of relationships. Rather, the young man relates with the assumption that the young woman can leave anytime. So, they do the things that won't hurt a lot if the relationship ended. For example, if a young man had to help their girlfriend out of a financial problem, they might not deplete their bank account, and not that it is wise to do so, but they offer partial help or give excuses. With the increasing skepticism among young men, in every relationship, they try to study the intentions of the young woman. Even a young woman who ticks all the boxes can be seen in a different lens and a not so good type of lens. Young men mentioned the issue of young women who are target workers. They are willing to adjust their life, their lifestyle, and behavior temporarily to interest a man into marrying them. These young women are either being pressured by their parents or aunties to marry, or they realize that they are getting older. Their interest is not in making a family, but getting society off their back. Like they say, it takes one fly to spoil the soup. All genuine young women with genuine intentions are being bundled up together. So, even when the young woman is trying enough to be the perfect partner, the young man might take their time to make the marriage decision. There are also awkward scenarios where a young man wanted to be in the lead, but all potential young women were financially stronger than him. Those who had met partners who were financially okay share that they did not feel needed. And since feeling needed or wanted is what gets people to deeply commit to others, in this particular scenario, the young man did not feel needed. He had no one to be a hero to. His masculinity had not been activated. Under the same scenario, they were also hit by the bossiness of the young woman. Important to say that not all women are like this. It could be argued today that only a weak man would fear such a young woman. Did the relationship happen? No. Did the young woman find the strong man? I am not sure. In scenarios like this, where a young man is being branded as weak because he couldn't stand a young woman's arrogance and pride, they tend to withdraw from the whole hullabaloo of proving themselves. There's something we have not noticed about financial power in relationships. Whether it's good or bad is another discussion. But what can make someone want to work through conflicts if they can live and stay alone? They won't need financial support from their partner because they are financially stable. These kinds of relationships where both partners are financially stable, both of them must be willing to stay. If one feels that at some point they might leave, there's nothing to fight for. So a financially stable young woman might be frowned upon because the young man doesn't have any control or charm over her. She can move on if she wanted. Again, not all financially stable young women are like this. Therefore, because of past relationship experiences, finding a marriage partner for young men comes with a lot of skepticism. What if this person's intentions are not for a long-term relationship? They wonder with every relationship. And so, young women who come into the young man's life after all the disappointments pay for the actions of women who came before her. The young woman must prove themselves beyond reasonable doubt. And as we all know, building trust in another human being takes consistency and time. It then becomes tiresome when a genuine young woman is treated with distrust longer than she anticipated. The young woman notices that the relationship is going nowhere. She eventually gets tired and leaves, but deeply hurt. The young man's initial suspicion is confirmed. His belief that young women cannot commit long term is driven deeper into his subconscious. From then onwards, all his future relationships are not given a long-term feel, and the cycle repeats itself. Number 2, untamed demands influenced by upbringing. Young men are overwhelmed by the amount of expectations that young women put before them as a condition for their love and commitment. Not that a young man will have to sign some form of commitment later. No. The demands keep increasing day by day. And since many men are wired to prove themselves, to be a woman's hero, they keep trying to stretch to accommodate the new demands until they burn out. As I said before, these issues do not represent all young women out there. The reason they could be getting attention is that more young men might be experiencing them. Young men shared with me that they cannot withstand the demands that today's young women have. Some young women do not expect to hustle at all. They also believe that young men don't have limits. How does this happen? There are three categories of young women raised from different economic backgrounds. Those raised from rich families, middle and low-income homes. Those in high-end upbringing have been nurtured to get everything they need and want. Everything. Their parents have never failed to provide anything. So, when they finish school and leave home to live with their husband or fall in love with a guy, they are not getting married or falling in love to an ordinary person, but some form of God. This God must have everything she needs. She only needs to ask. To express his love, the young man should provide everything that her heart desires. He should not fail at this because there will be a conflict. So, this strains the relationship in bits, especially when the young man is trying with all his ability, but his efforts are not being noticed. Not to say that young women from well-off families are not easy to date or marry. Their upbringing can get in the way. Shouldn't young men find young women who fit their economic status? Young women from middle and low-income homes have not been excluded from having impossible expectations and making them a condition for love or marriage. Impossible expectations, I mean demands made with the knowledge that the young man cannot meet them. Even though low-income backgrounds create hustlers, some young women hate to be in a situation that looks similar to the hassles they went through growing up. So, finding a partner is more like finding a place of rest. This man should make her life easier, she expects. The fear of failing or the experience of failing to meet the demands of young women has driven young men to commit less. Even though this video is addressing issues from the side of young men, let me use a few minutes to address an issue on the side of women. They say that a woman's fidelity is tested in terms of scarcity or poverty, but that of a man is tested in times of plenty. So, when young women accept to love young men who are still figuring things out, they are abandoned once the young man's financial muscle strengthens. So, young women from low-income homes are also tired of building men. It might explain well why they might want a man who has already made wealth. Depending on which side you are, the bridge of trust needs to be rebuilt again. Number 3, what the marriage commitment means to the individual. When young men think about marriage, they have each created an image of what it is. Whether it is the reality or not, it guides their decision. They have created an image of what freedoms they will have to forfeit once they get married. For example, the freedom to do what they want at any time they want. And thus the term that marriage is a prison that two people choose for themselves. As a single young man, they enjoy the freedom to be intimate with anyone their feelings choose. As many as these kinds of young men are, an equal number of young women in this caliber exist. Starting a new relationship has become easy for a good number of young men. So, why get stuck in one that might get boring? Would this be the kind of freedom they want to let go of? Unfortunate as this might be, depending on who is interpreting it, marriage puts a stop to all this. For other young men, a marriage commitment means being consistently under pressure to satisfy the unending wants and needs of your partner. Are young men sure that they will be consistent? That they will have a stable source of income to make that happen? When it turns into a form of fear, the fear of not measuring up or failing along the way, the marriage decision definitely delays. Number 4, social confusion. There was a time when a man was defined by their ability to take care of and protect their family. But society would also provide the man with support to fulfill their role. For example, there are instances in several African cultures where a heir to the father had to be a boy. In addition, when it came to inheriting property, a boy was considered first. In my culture, I was told that when a boy came of age, his father would give him land and help him marry and then start a family. I did not have the opportunity to benefit from this. Boys were easily accepted in a job because society knew they had a family that fed off them. Of course, just like any other privileged group of people, their conduct often got from bad to worse. In an effort to satisfy every selfish interest they had, they brought misery to others. Issues like domestic violence. That happened when men were favored. Then some people felt that they needed to redistribute the power equally between men and women. Society today is experiencing a lot of activism. Activism touches to amplify the plight of vulnerable groups of people to enable them get the power to determine their destinies. What we remember as a patriarchal society, a society where male dominance was rewarded, has been shredded to pieces. Now society is at the point of learning how to live without men in the lead and women taking up decision roles. As you know, it is not always easy to get from a privileged position to a non-privileged one. Can a man imagine themselves not in the lead? Is a woman okay with playing a supportive role no matter their financial muscle? And let's be real, the confusion around these questions is the real problem. Looks like young men are saying, if I am not in the lead, I will not commit. If my position as a leader is not assured, I will not commit. While the young women are saying, if I am contributing the same as you are, I don't follow you, I lead with you. Society is in the middle of a social transition in terms of men's and women's roles. We have not yet lived long enough to see if this social experiment holds. The definition of a man as a provider and protector and the social structure that supported it has been torn down. Therefore, young men have been confused by messages on who a man is. There isn't a single message on what a man is. A few will quote the definitions of an era that is being fought that a man provides. Others will now include gentleness, docile, harmless, less fierce, calm, fun in the definitions of a man. When someone is not married, he's not a man. When he doesn't have a lot of money, he's not a man. When he's not standing his ground in the home, he's not a man. When he expresses his fears, he's not a man. When he's not talking about cars or football, he's not a man. When he gets home early, he's not a man. When he cries, he's not a man. When he doesn't fight, he's not a man. When he fights, it's toxic masculinity. In the past society, having a family was a measure of a man. Today, there isn't a single thing that society converges on regarding who a man is. Right now, just ask 5 people you will find randomly and see if they give you the same answer. I will predict that marriage won't be high on that list. If a young man believes what makes them a man is having money, they'll buy themselves into that world. If a young man feels that sleeping with a lot of women makes them a man, that is what they will pursue. Young men are taking their time making a marriage decision because marriage does not validate them anymore. They will still not be felt as men unless they have money. Number 5, the monetization of love. There was a story in one of the tribes here in Uganda where young women fled villages for the town. The issue was that you were only able to marry if you could afford the bride price. The bride price was in form of cows. Now, the only people who could afford the bride price were the mature men. They had daughters to give away in exchange for cows as bride price. In turn, they would use the bride price to marry younger girls. To avoid getting married to older men, young women had fled to towns. When money is put as a condition for love, it can only attract certain types of men. It kicks out many young men. Older guys who have had the time to make the money take their advantage. The remaining young women who are not conditioning their love to money are also feared by young men, thinking all of them will demand for money at some point. These young men resort to hit and run. They hope that by the time the young woman asks for money, they will be gone. Number 6, the price a young man thinks he should pay. Many of the people above 37 years today grew up in neighborhoods that were closed. They had no influence from other cultures or neighborhoods. For example, you knew all your neighbors and relatives in other villages, but not the people in the nearby villages. So, their lifestyles had no influence elsewhere. Then the world got connected through media, social media and television. Now, when somebody is planning a wedding, for example, the knowledge they are basing on is no longer limited to the local ones. With a variety of ideas open to them, young men want a perfect wedding. At the same time, the ideal wedding they like is not affordable. Young men know that their wedding will be compared. Even the bride might not settle for anything below the current trends. So, when a wedding becomes a huge undertaking, young men take their time. The price a young man feels they need to pay originates on what their own definition of a man is. In a confusion of who a man is, you will not fail to find a young man who has set for himself physical milestones that he must achieve before they marry. It's a good target. For example, they may want to build a house and perhaps be able to afford the cost of the introduction and wedding. That way, they can feel like a man. In fact, this is not a new desire for men. 20 years ago, couples would be mature and already having children. So when they made a wedding, they would go back to their home. However, since the age of owning a home today has gone up for most young men, their delay for marriage is dependent on an internal goal that is best known to them. Every time they notice that they might not be able to build a house soon, for example, they hesitate to get into any relationship. lest they are underlooked by their wife as not being a man. Those who get into a committed relationship might take their time before they can make things official. Number 7, making love a legal matter. Combine being skeptical about the young woman's commitment to a long-term relationship with the possibility of being sued to divide property and pull him away from his children. Then you have a young man who is completely hesitant to commit. With the law defining how people should deal with each other, makes love a mental process. It removes the importance of emotions and feelings. Now, two people can play their cards in a way that they don't get sued, or if they are sued, they do not lose their life's sweat. Whether having a law that guides marriages helps create stronger marriages is another discussion. Whether its interest was to strengthen marriages is another matter. The unfortunate bit is that men are the most cautious about this law. It's not manly to take your wife to court or ask for divorce. It's often the other way around. If it is the men to suffer the consequences of the law, they will be extremely careful before getting into any committal relationship. Certainly, this delays a marriage decision. Isn't it common today to find a young man having children but not staying with their mother? Or don't we have an increasing number of single women with children who have living fathers? In conclusion, if you have been wondering why the marriage decision among young men is taking so long, I have just explained 6 reasons. If you have a boyfriend right now, you need to know where their hesitation towards committing to a marriage comes from. If you manifest signs that suit the people or the scenarios I have explained, it might end your relationship or postpone the marriage decision. But if you have a girlfriend, it is important to know the fears that affect the possibility to commit. In many cases, the right young women will come around, but because you are so attached to your painful past, you will frustrate them. Because you have not given them the chance, you will forever think they are like all those bad ones in your past. If you are part of society, it is time we rise up and find solutions for these issues. Tomorrow, it might be your young man struggling with this decision, or it could be your daughter dating a wounded young man who ends up messing her up. If you found this video informative or you liked the information, please give it a thumbs up by hitting the like button. I would like to continue sharing such information. Please subscribe and leave a comment. I'd like to know what you think about this. What has been your experience? Also share this video with the people you think need to hear it. I will see you in the next video.